Alright guys, welcome back. So basically this video is going to be a wee bit about backgrounds, suctions, and basically the methods used to not just control the suction but help the bond, help the plaster, the sand cement render, help the bond. So, and it all follows off a question, one of the best questions I've had, just going to read it here. In a wee while anyway, on YouTube. So the question was, when do you use PVA / SBR and Scud Coat? How to know when to use what? He said thank you. But basically I could spend all day typing back a comment and replying that. Sometimes I do, and then sometimes it's just much easier to make the video. So the question is, when to use PVA and SBR? I wouldn't tend to use PVA outside whatsoever, and the reason for that is it can soften again with dampness, with wet. So outside you're taking a big risk if you use PVA. Now that being said, there is exterior PVAs that are designed for outside, and obviously they won't re-soften again, so you have to take that in the consideration when you're talking about it, because I have used them ones and it says exterior on them. Now SBR, and there's lots of different methods with SBR that people use, but if it's between SBR and Scud Coat, the main reason why I would use SBR would tend to be cleanliness. If it's, say it's over like a smoother type of brick, or you know, any brick in particular, SBR painted on would be a bit neater than Scud Coat applied, and the reason for that is you're just rolling it on, where sand cement, Scud Coat is through on, diced on, and it tends to make a quite bit of mess around windows, soffits, guttering, doors, and biggest of all, the ground. Of course you can cover up, 100% you can cover up, but of all my years plastering, you put the plastic down, you weigh it down, you can't really tape it down to anything because it's most times it's brick, block paving, concrete paving, some types of floor that nothing really sticks to, so you can't really tape it down, and there's still going to be joints in places. And what you tend to find is, because it's Scud Coat, it gets onto that, and then it just makes things really hard to clean up and wash afterwards. So if it's, my personal reference is, if the place is absolutely spotless, have lovely brick paving stuff, I tend to steer away from wanting to Scud Coat it. Just because of that factor alone. Once that stuff starts setting on the brick or tarmac, it's really hard to shift it, especially with SBR in the mix. It's pretty hard. Whereas when you roll it on, you can control it a lot better. It's not, you know, it's just not getting fired everywhere. So is Scud Coat better than SBR? It's probably is slightly better. It's probably a slightly better coat, slightly better bond, but what I would tend to do is paint the SBR on and put a couple of capfuls in each mix as well, so that I'm getting it twice. The other thing I do that some other plasters don't do is I don't let it dry completely. I'll let it dry some, but I won't let it dry completely, because I want the render and the SBR all to set as one and lock together better. I know lots of people prime the wall and let it set completely and then go over it, but to me, I know that probably within 24 hours it's probably not so bad because it's not fully cured, but I still want that extra bond. I'll do everything to get that little bit of a better job done, and even if that's all the unforeseen stuff like the scratch coat, the Scud Coat, I will do it just to try and get that extra bit better for the customer. But yeah, which one's superior of holding on? Possibly Scud Coat slightly superior, but when I say that I mean slightly. I do hope to test that theory at some stage, just never seem to have any time to do them small videos between running a plastering show. But no, honestly, between plastering on sites and the job that I'm doing at the minute now, where I'm not on site, so I can't get footage of it. And building a house, it eats up all the time, and then obviously want to spend time with the family. But yeah, so I think I've covered the most of them. Again, PVA, SBR for insides. Again, my thoughts on the SBR is you shouldn't be plastering over it when it's fully dry. I believe that you'll have a better bond if you plaster over it or render over it when it's slightly wet. Same as PVA. I believe that the best bond is when the PVA is first tacky. Again, now everything I'm talking about here so far pretty much is a chemical bond. Now, if you go down the road of mechanical bonds, where somebody was suggesting that I did over in the house over the conduit, which I thought was funny. They were telling me how to plaster, but yeah, that's okay as well. Tips and advice from people are great as well. But they said mix SBR with a bit of grit and paint it over the conduit, because it'll be really rough and it'll give you a great key. There's a better way. You could paint the SBR up the conduit and then just render over it, and it's going to be a mechanical bond then. And what I'm talking about here is that grit that you have made is just going to be made between the render and the conduit anyway. So if you rip that off, that conduit's going to probably rip off the wall with the render, basically. And again, the other thing, a wee bit about suction, is Scud Coat's great at helping control suction. So if the likes of, you were going over, in particular one we did with, it was an acrylic job in the end, but still had to be scudded, scratched, rubbed up, primed, and then acrylic. So you can see how there's a lot of work in acrylic, but the Scud Coat really did help control the suction. That red brick was really, really hot. When I say hot, that means it'll suck the moisture out of the plaster, something you don't want. And it's a comment I get quite regular on the TikTok channel and the YouTube shorts, people saying, you should soak that wall, you should soak that wall. When frames are this heavy, and you're going to be doing multiple coats, there is absolutely no need to soak a wall. The first layer is going to soak in, and then you're going to do another layer, and then maybe a third layer. All that moisture in that sand cement is more than enough for brand new build blocks, especially if it's, you know, it's not that old of a build and it's low suction block. It's, you know, I also showed that in other videos where you're waiting a couple of hours just to finish the wall, just to rub it. So if it's taking that long, it's low suction. Where the likes of red brick, you might need to wet it, then scud it, then leave that a couple of days, then wet or scud, then scratch it. But every coat you'll find, you'll have a wee bit less suction because you're waterproofer. Your SBR, and SBR is a waterproofer too, is slowing down the suction. Again, if I could scud to slow down suction, I certainly would. The other comments I was getting on block was people saying you should scud the block. The blocks here and round where I'm from, there's that much holes in them. The render goes in, it locks in. They're designed that way. They're designed to take the grip of the sand cement render. Again, the manufacturers even state that. Yes, sweating down the block will help slow it down and slightly help the bond. But if it's not, you know, if it's not drying in, it's not necessary. But if it was built like a year or two, absolutely wet everything down, because it's going to be hot and it's going to have higher suction. But concrete heads typically have low suction. Again, concrete heads, they would be more likely to need scudded than the block because they're a bit smoother. Again, on site, most times a mesh comes up and gets a good bit of that. Again, it's all depends on what the site specs are, what you have to do, what way you have to plaster over things, and all those things. But yes, Scud Coat your block if you want. I do tend to find that a lot of people that Scud Coat over block literally only cover 30% of it, so what's the point of that anyway? So you get a 30% of a better bond. Baffles me. If I was scudding the block, I'd scud the whole thing. There'd maybe be 3 to 4% mist of wee patches. But killing suction's not always a brilliant thing. You tend to want a wee bit of suction. You don't want to have stuff sliding down a wall. Whereas, like say, in window walls and door frame walls that we be doing on site, if we soak them down the way people are talking, they would just slump down. Cause it's some of the walls are this thick. If you're coating on a wet background, you've lost your key. It's all slumping off. You'd be a better plasterer than me if you can coat all that and keep it on in the same day. And yes, then people might start saying the price isn't right. Maybe it's not right. Maybe the price is too low. But I always say you can't pay a plasterer enough money to do this job. You really can't. So we could talk about money all day long. The whole world could talk about money all day long. But hopefully this answers the question to that YouTube comment, which, like I said, very good question. There is more questions that I hope to answer, hope to help with. But that question was from Pekajul. So I think that's how you would say his name. And it was on one of the how can you plaster cement render over painted concrete blocks. And again, that was one where I decided to go with SBR over Scud Coat, just because the cleanup would be incredible. Again, I have been back round past that job and it looks just as good as the day I left. I would have loved to do acrylic on that too, but the guy just wanted, it was just a guy, he just wanted it tidied up. Some people go over the top with what they say you should do on jobs and all, but ultimately it's the customer, guys. The customer is the boss. Or if you're working for somebody else, whoever's paying your wages is the boss. If they tell you to do it a specific way, that's the way you're going to be doing it. Can you advise them? All you can do is advise them and stuff. And again, there's obviously there's a lot of plasterers out there that would walk away from the job and maybe not work for 2 weeks if that's a 2 week job and stuff. That's brilliant. All down to circumstance, obviously. If you feel like your reputation's on the line, maybe you should walk away. But if you feel like you can do it in such a way that keeps that customer happy and gets the job done right, that's the way to go. Again, I always do say you should do it right, guys, but at the same time everybody has bills to pay, and if the customer wants you to do something crazy, just make sure that you have that well documented. You do see me making lots of videos, guys. Trust me when I say this. I make videos not just for YouTube, but sometimes I walk around the job, make a video and state all the facts that the customer wants done. So just to have a document, and it does give me before and after shots as well. I think I've covered that question well. There is more questions that need to get answered, and hopefully you have enjoyed this video and it's cleared some things up there. Again, I could go on a live stream here and talk all day long about this, but unfortunately at the minute I'm in the van and I have to go. I'm going to just go set some beads here till weekend. I'm going to go set some beads, set a job up for the following weekend. We're doing a job here and we're very busy for the next 10-12 weeks or something, and I am even busier than that on top. So yeah, I'll try and get as much content up with as much information and value as possible, such as slapdash. I'm gonna have to do a whole thing on that.
What we doing live? Echoes in eternity.